And coming up after the break, we're going to bounce off of what Savannah's been reporting and talk a little bit about how crazy is this person potentially. Are there any signals in his handwriting? An expert joins us in a moment. Welcome back to Banfield and Ford. For about an hour and 15 minutes or so, I've been promising you that we are going to look very deeply at the writings and the filings, the court filings of Zakaria Moussaoui, and just what his handwriting actually tells us. And you know what? We always promise and deliver. Well, most of the time, anyway. And we're going to do that now. Joining us live on the telephone from Hollywood, California, is Bart Baggett, who is a noted handwriting expert. In fact, he's the author of CDs and DVDs and books, including the very new Handwriting Analysis 101, Change Your Handwriting, Change Your Life. Bart, good to talk to you again. It's been a long time, my friend.
Ashley, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, listen, when I first had a chance to look at these defense exhibits, notably the handwriting and these crazy letters that Moussaoui has written either to the judge or to the court, I had quite a visceral reaction, and I was curious as to what your overall reaction to that would be.
Well, I think your visceral reaction is very natural. When people see handwriting that's absolutely crazy, you know, intuitively, whether they've been trained or not, sort of go, oh my gosh. And my first reaction was, wow, scary, wow, disturbed, and oh, how interesting from my perspective.
Ah, well, I'm glad you said interesting from your perspective, because I wanted to break out a few pieces of it, if I may. And let's go to Exhibit 1, shall we? There was something in the handwriting on one of these pages that we're going to blow up for you that said, kill the disbeliever. And it went on and on and on. But basically, I want you to tell me what the actual writing says about him as opposed to the message. The message aside, right. We know what the message aside, it shows that he hates us. But what does the handwriting tell us about him in this respect?
Well, the handwriting is block printing, and it's really interesting because all the letters are cursive except for these huge pieces of block printing, which seem to be like the Word of God. And when you see block printing in anybody, it's sort of a disassociation from any intimacy. And it's extremely masculine. It's sort of putting a bold face forward. And so you see this person that's not revealing any vulnerability. So, like I said, very masculine in context.
Now, let's be clear. A lot of us might have that, right? We might
Absolutely.
all be sort of tough and on the outside, et cetera. So
well,
it's not, doesn't
and
really...
This is what's so fast about his writing is it's filled with traits that all of us have, and sometimes good traits. We're going to go to slide in a minute where we see high self-image. We see intelligence. We see some traits that are very positive taken separately, but you combine these with the really creepy, unethical, and lying traits we'll see later. Scary.
All right, let's go to number 2, and it's the word judge. We extracted the word judge, how he wrote the word judge from one of these filings. I want you to let me know what it is about the G in the word judge that is telling.
Well, this is just textbook. There's about 80 traits which they've identified that have certain correlating personality traits. And anytime your lower loops look like a V or a shovel, like a very sharp edge, it's aggressiveness. It's aggressiveness and a tendency toward violence.
Really?
So very straight up textbook. Even my buddies in college that played hockey, some of them had this in their writing. They were very aggressive.
It's the way that G loops down and then V's out instead of looping around and back, right?
Yeah, the psychological reason is there's a lack of trust, there's a lack of liking of people and trust, and there's aggressiveness because of the angles.
Okay, let's move on to the other one, and it's I'll put up 2, a tear from these documents. One of them is the combination of the words "let her to," and the other one is "submit that." There's something about the way he works his T's that's telling. What is it?
It's really interesting. You know, you've known me for a few years, and in some of my more self-help books about how the letter T is self-image. And the higher people cross their T, the more ambitious they are, the generally more they like themselves, and in psychology and personal development, the more belief system you have, the more you achieve. And this is what's scary about this guy. He does like himself, he does believe in himself, and he does have very high goals. So when you get someone with a corrupted ethical system and high goals, watch out.
That's interesting. Now, what about this one? The word all-American. He tends to really have quite a pronounced loop in the way he writes the words all-American. We'll see it in just a moment. There we go. You've sort of blocked them out. All-American. Big, big, loopy letters. What does that mean?
Well, it's not so much loopy letters. It's in the middle letters O and A. This is where we see someone's ethics. We see if somebody lies. If somebody has double loops instead of that standard loop we were taught in 3rd grade. It's a huge question on ethics. And in all his A's and O's, it's not even consistent. I mean, he has a hard time forming an A or an O with any consistency that you and I were taught in school. And this all relates to a lack of ability to tell the truth and to be upfront. So it's a huge scar on his ethical foundation.
That's interesting. All right, how about this? The word information. We extracted that from this crazy one, the Global Solution Witch Hunt letter, which in itself was just bizarre to read. But the word information shows M's that are very pointy and again has that T that's crossed way up high.
Well, this is interesting because this looks like a lot of CEOs writing. Those pointy M's are a sign of intelligence, fast thinking. In reference to Einstein is also Hitler. So he's an intelligent guy. This is not a guy that's lack of analytical thinking. The T-bar is both high self-image and temper, and I think the most important glaring smoking gun of why this guy is very, very cruel is that T-bar that slants down. Mm-hmm. That is called domineering. You see this in abusive people, especially abusive men. It's a control freak, and it's someone that was probably abused because now they feel totally out of control in their world, so they have to basically excessively control things around them.
Let's keep that up there for a second, guys, because just below the word information is police in the. And Bart, I'm noticing that T in the word the, it actually has a lower cross. Does that show that he's sort of confused in the way he crosses those two? Some are high, showing this high self-regard, and then the other one's a little bit lower.
Well, it's lower, but it's definitely not low in contrast to the typical person. You know, most people, I would say 60% of the watching audience cross their T-bar right at the tops of the M's and N's. Even that one is lower than it is. Mm-hmm. It's still high in contrast. Okay. But I don't think anyone ever crosses it consistently on top, unless I read my books and go, I'm going to have a good self-image. But generally, it's a little confusion. But his vanity and his need for controlling others are what scares me about this guy.
Okay, one other, now let's remember he is a French speaker of Moroccan descent, so sometimes his grammar and his spelling is off, which is understandable. He writes Her Machiavellic of England, and there's something specific about how he wrote that. If you can see, the H and the M are quite bold. What does that tell us?
Well, this is really interesting. This first page is almost totally retraced. It sort of reminds me of typical ransom notes if someone gets kidnapped or something, you know, put in the money, John Benet Ramsey type stuff. There's a lot of extra effort taken to send this letter properly. So he retraces almost half the letter. The H and the M are retraced almost 4 or 5 times. So he is making darn sure that you recognize that H and M, and then later he uses it as an acronym, sort of like saying, hey, I'm going to use this HM. So he's basically, when you retrace stuff, he has a fear of not being heard the first time, so he's yelling.
Could it also be, and it's sort of curious, could it also be, here's a guy stuck in a cell with nothing else to do, so why not go over the letters again? I mean, he literally has nothing to do.
Well, I think that's a good point, and not only nothing to do, but as you're writing a letter that you don't know if anyone's going to read, it's like, I'm going to underline something. I've seen a lot of prison letters, and they underline, they emphasize, they put exclamation points, because they really feel unheard and unlistened to, so they're just trying to over-express.
Okay. What about this last one? It has the 2 words defendant written and also the past tense of call, called. Is there something specific about the way these loops sort of don't connect to the rest of the word?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know statistically exactly, I'm not 100% sure, but in my research, and a lot of research, is that those empty spaces are injuries on the guy's head or cranium.
Say that again?
He has health issues on his head or on his skull. Like he literally has a scar or an injury, and it would be the same thing in the lower loops, would be something on his foot. That's
funny because a lot of the people who've been in court have noticed significant bruising on his forehead, and that's not unusual for somebody who is very devout in Islam, praying 5 times a day with their forehead to the ground. It's almost like a badge of honor to have one of these bruises on your forehead. Shows that you really pray hard. Do you think that might have a connection in any way?
Well, you bet. I'll tell you why I know this is true, because someone spotted it on one of my handwriting samples, and I've got a 5-inch scar from when I was 4 years old.
Really?
And it shows up in all my L's. Not like this, not exactly like as dramatic as this guy's, but it's like, whoa, I didn't know health issues could be seen from handwriting. And yeah, so he definitely has some issues with his skull.
Well, hold on for 1 second on that, Bart. Savannah, I know you've been listening in on Bart's analysis. It was interesting when he mentioned this head injury, because we've all seen the bruise that Moussaoui has. You're an attorney and you've practiced before and you've seen evidence before, and it's not unusual to have prisoners writing letters, specifically desperate letters saying, I'm innocent. But did anything strike you as unique or original about the filings that you saw in evidence from Moussaoui?
Oh, I would say they are unique and original, and it's interesting because it was talked about a lot in court today. I mean, some periods of time when he was representing himself and filing these motions, you know, I'm not going to say they're the work of some great legal scholar, but you can follow the train of thought. They make some sense, particularly in context of whatever was happening in the case at that time. But then there are these whole periods where he's filing motion after motion after motion. I mean, there are dozens of these things, and they're incoherent. And then he has this very odd practice of using initials. For example, the WTC, the World Trade Center. Instead of ever saying World Trade Center, he says things like World Top Circuit, or he'll say Unique Best Lawyer, but then he'll underline UBL, like Osama bin Laden. I mean, I don't know if he thinks it's some kind of code or what he's doing, but it's very odd, and it's something you see over and over and over again throughout these pleadings that he filed. And the final point that one of the psychiatrists mentioned was, you know, it shows that Moussaoui is out of control in their minds, because there was nothing that he wanted more than to continue to be able to represent himself. And the judge warned him, if you don't stop filing all these frivolous and offensive and insulting pleadings, I'm going to take away your right to represent yourself. And he couldn't stop himself, and sure enough, he did lose that right. So it's very interesting.
And Bart Baggett, just bouncing off that a little bit, do you, I'm not sure if you've had access to other infamous criminals and their writings, but do you recognize any similarities in the writings of Moussaoui, say, to those of Manson or anybody else who clearly seems to be a little off? And should we have known something about Moussaoui with these writings prior to this incident, 9/11?
Well, if you saw the writings, you would know you've got, you know, someone that is definitely angry, definitely over-controlling, definitely ambitious, and really, really poor ethics. But I don't think any of that, if you just saw that, would say, oh my God, we need to follow this guy around with a police car. If he was on the watch list and you saw those characteristics, okay, now this guy's dangerous. Because if you're smart enough to cause trouble, that's a big problem. And he is smart enough to cause trouble, and he is ambitious, and he does have all the issues that would say, hey, this guy is not stable. And he does remind me of some of the Mansons and some of the more treacherous criminals that we have seen.
It's just fascinating stuff, Bart. Again, I just want to remind our viewers, you're the author of Handwriting Analysis 101, Change Your Handwriting, Change Your Life, and a whole bunch of other things, too. You're great for doing this. Thanks for your insight, Bart. Appreciate it.
Great. Just stop by the website at handwritinguniversity.com, and I posted the analysis as well.
I will do that. Thank you for that. And also, Savannah Guthrie, I can't say it enough. Great work. You really have covered this remarkably, and I don't know how you stay sane with some of the stuff you've had to endure. We sure appreciate it, Savannah.
Thanks, Ashley. And I'm glad they're not analyzing our handwriting.
Oh, you know that's coming next. You know that's coming next. We have to take a very quick break, but we'll be right back.
And hear the third branch of the government for themselves.